cycling fans watching around the world. This is Jake Sanderson, aka the stick-thin sprinter known as Snowman Cycling. And I'm back with another race recap video for you. This one ends up being one of, if not the craziest race that I've done on Zwift in a long time, if not ever. It starts crazily, as you're about to see, and it ends even more crazily. So strap yourselves in as I talk you through this one. You are definitely not going to want to miss the finish here. And it's definitely not got the usual vibe, because rather than using what I like to call game theory optimal tactics to try and maximize my chance of getting the win, this is a rare example of me kind of throwing the tactics out of the window, because as you can see, I've gone like a bat out of hell as hard as I can out of the start pen and into the race. That's something that I don't do very often, if ever, and the reason is that you'll hear me say it all the time. I preach about keeping your powder dry, saving as much energy as you can, and using it for those one or two big moments later on in the race when it's easier to win it. For this one, we're not doing that for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I'm really trying my absolute best to get promoted out of Cat C and back into Cat B, and that meant that I wanted to try a 5-minute max effort, basically to just go as absolutely hard as I could for 5 minutes, see what sort of power I could do, and see if that will get me upgraded back into B. And I think that seems like a good idea in this race, because it's all uphill for the first 5 minutes, as you can see there. This one is called Castle Crit, and as you come out of the start pen, it's uphill all the way to the castle. So if you're going for a 5-minute effort like me and you're a lightweight rider, this could be a really good one to put the other riders in this race under pressure and try and get as big a gap as we can possibly get heading over the top of this hill. So this definitely isn't my usual approach, and I will be going very easy really here, sat in the draft for the most part. But instead, I'm just trying to crack on and see how much of a gap I can get as we get over the top of this. And as you can see here, I do get quite a big gap. I managed to get a big gap over the rest of the guys. And I do in fact do a 5-minute power PB for 2024 of 4.4 watts per kilo. So that's really good. We've got a really big lead. I've done my power targets, the best of the year. However, we have got some problems here, and they are big problems. Firstly, you may have noticed that I am redder than a tomato, because unfortunately for me, I've decided to do this on the hottest day of the year so far in the UK. Over 30 degrees. So hot. Which means that my plastic conservatory is hotter than the face of the sun. And at this point, I'm wondering what on earth I've done to myself. Why have I done this? Because now I'm really struggling to put down any sort of power whatsoever. And worse than that, I can see that there's a rider behind me called Coutinho who has broken away from the other chasers, and he seems to be putting in a concerted effort to catch me. Maybe he spotted my power has come down a little bit. Maybe he just feels good and he realizes if he wants to get to the front of this race, he has to go now. But either way, this is the last thing that I wanted to see whilst I was trying to defend that 45-second gap. And as you can see on the climb, and we're only on the first lap still, he has really halved that deficit already, and it's just coming down. The time gap is just tumbling down, and I know that I've put in all that effort for essentially no reason whatsoever, because I feel like Coutinho is going to catch me, even though I'm trying to do my best here to sort of stay away. When it comes down to under 10 seconds, I realise at that point there's no point trying to kill myself to get away. I'm best off trying to cool down a little bit here, get a little bit of a breather, try and get some water. Unfortunately for me, I didn't even fill up my water bottle. And before we know it, Coutinho has caught onto the back, and my only option here is to just get onto his wheel and try and hold onto his wheel and hope that he doesn't leave me for dead on the next climb, which is coming up very shortly. Because if he puts in any sort of concerted effort here, I'm just too hot and I'm really struggling to put down the power to follow. But it looks like to me he's taking this opportunity on the descent to get a little bit of a breather as well. And having a quick look at this rider on Zwift Power, I'm fairly sure that he just did his own 5-minute max to try and get onto me. So he does not push the pace when he catches on, and instead we just sort of share the load a little bit. We're not working particularly hard, but we are trying to sort of stay away from the chasers. And as you can see, the gap behind the chasers has come down to under 20 seconds. All I can do here is try and hold on to his wheel, not even able to really offer up much of a pull to try and keep the riders behind at bay. And there's one specific rider behind, Tarao, who's done a really good job of getting away from the other riders, and they are just putting down the power to try and chase us. They're really not easing up. I had a quick look. This rider isn't on Zwift Power, and they also don't have a heart rate monitor on. So who knows what we're dealing with here? but I'm feeling pretty helpless at this point. There's just nothing I can do to stop this rider catching up to us. And again, feels like all that energy that I did at the start of the race was for nothing. So I'm feeling pretty demoralized at this point. I'm thinking I'm probably going to get dropped on the next climb or the one after, especially if Terrell catches and decides to push the pace. But luckily for me, Coutinho wants to sort of stay out front, so I'm able to glue myself to the back of his wheel, enjoy a little bit of a draft and recovery, and then as we approach the climb again, it's just a case of digging in and trying to hold on to his wheel as he pushes the pace. And as we can see, Terrell behind as well, again, knows that this is their opportunity to try and catch on. Coutinho puts in a bit of an attack. I managed to hold on to him. But kudos to Terrell, because before we know it, they have managed to join up to us at the top of this climb. And that is the last thing that I think either me or Coutinho wanted to see at this point. My heart rate is still sky high. I'm still redder than a lobster. And I really am thinking to myself, why did I have to do this? Why did I have to make my own life so difficult? Why couldn't I have just stuck to the usual tactics? But that wouldn't be any fun, would it? And my pain is your gain. So I'm just clinging to the fact that this one's probably going to be quite an entertaining race on YouTube and trying to think of an excuse to explain why I let a 45-second gap off the front disappear in less than 3 minutes. But that's what's good about Zwift racing. Sometimes you find out more about yourself when your back's up against the wall, you're in a sticky situation, and you've got to find a way out of the spot that you're in. And spoiler alert, because the last lap of this one is going to be absolute carnage. And even though I've done a 5-minute power PB for 2024 at the start of this race, it finishes with a 1.5-minute power PB for 2024 to end the race. So this one is bookmarked to either end by PBs for 2024, so it's absolutely hectic. And you might forgive me for thinking that that means this penultimate climb is going to be a bit easier as everyone saves something for the end after they've had to catch it back on. But no, Terrell senses weakness and he puts in a devastating attack that leaves me really struggling to hold the wheel. I'm doing my absolute best to cling on there, but it opens up a bit more than 5 meters. I managed to get back on. Coutinho dangles off the back and he manages to put in a surge to get back on. Terrell still doesn't give up and they continue on with their attack as we go over the top onto the flat. That gap opens up a little bit and I just decide I'm going to have to dig in real deep here. If that gap gets any bigger, then it's already over. Thankfully for us, Terrell eases up a little bit as he goes over the top as Coutinho comes through, which means that my heart rate is absolutely through the roof here. I am so hot, I can't even describe it in words. This is the hottest I have ever been on a Zwift race, not in a Zwift race. I can't quite believe how hot it really is. And that really does sap your energy and totally saps the power in your legs. And we know that these guys are going to attack on the final climb, both of them most likely, which means if we want to win this race, we're going to have to try and find some power out of somewhere and something in the legs, because these guys have fought super hard to get back on here and they are not going to let me walk away with this race. And I already know at this point that my tactic is going to be to mark their attacks on the climb and to just try and follow them and then try and outkick them on the line in a sort of sprint finish, do what we do best. But that's going to depend on if I can follow the wheels from these guys when they launch these attacks any minute now. And as you can see here, I also make the decision to take off my heart rate monitor because I know that my heart rate is super high and I really don't want that to get into my head. You can see I'm at my max heart rate. I might think that I can't go any harder, but sometimes you can find a little bit more if you don't quite know how hard you're going. And we're going to need every single advantage that we can get as the attacks start from here. Terrell decides to launch it early, see if he can try and get rid of anybody as we start the climb. And remember, from at this point onwards, it's a 1.5 minute power PB for me for 2024. So I'm really suffering the whole way up this climb. And Terrell isn't going super hard here. He's just putting in a sustained attack. And as we can see, Coutinho decides that it's not hard enough for him and he's going to take this opportunity to launch his attack. And he goes over the front. So I have to do everything I can to try and get onto his wheel here. And we can see that the gap opens up a little bit behind 7 meters to Terrell. So I know that I have to follow this. I have to go with him if I want to sort of win this race. And he puts in another acceleration here that really cripples me. It really hurts. I'm having to dig super deep here to try and get on. Terrell is coming back. He's managed to close that gap. And in fact, he comes through the front of the group. He deploys his power up. And this is where the problems start for me. I'm unable to deploy my power up properly. It takes me a few seconds to do it. And as you can see, Terrell takes full advantage of that and manages to get a gap off the front. So really bad from me here. But as I manage to get my power up going, I launch the sprint. Is it going to be too late? I think I'm not going to be able to catch him in time. As we come around the corner, we can see that finish line. The gap's coming down, but just not fast enough. I am going to run out of road here. But no, just in time we come around and we couldn't have left that any later. That's got to be the closest win that I've ever had on Zwift. I just thought I'd run out of road there, but managed to do it at the very last second. Terrell must have been absolutely devastated to get pipped at the line there. So that's one of my most satisfying ever wins on Zwift, because I really did think that I'd thrown it away. Not once, but twice. And I have to get straight off the bike and throw myself onto the floor. I was huffing and puffing on the floor with the fans pointed at me for at least 5 minutes. I just really have never been that hot before. So super pleased to get the win. Feel like my numbers are going in the right direction. Hopefully we'll be in Cat B before you know it. That somehow did not get me promoted. 4.4 for 5 minutes, still Cat C rider. So thank you as always for joining me on this one. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you like, comment, share, most importantly subscribe. And as always, race fast, ride hard, and remember that you are appreciated.